I was typing out so much stuff to pregame for tonight's show that I still didn't give our region a proper name. We have names for each of the individual countries, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And in fact, those are listed out here. But for the region and for the sea, I still don't have something. I think I might have missed a suggestion for the sea, and if I did, then I'm sorry. But we have region 1 up here. This kind of grasslands region is Kandor. Region 2 is Aslandia. Region 3 is the Fallfire Plain. Region 4 down here is Ukt. 5 is Lacuna. Hey, Del, thank you. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Oh, that's right, Darkwolf. That does seem familiar. The Astragan Sea. I hereby name this region Kingland, and I imagine that the underscore is very important. And those who defy the king's word of using the underscore for Kingland it will be punished by death. And then, of course, Mesomasca, which is the island that's out in the middle here. King underscore land trademark. That's right. You have to get your royalties, don't you? Hey. Not to be confused with King's Landing, eh? Alright, so that just leaves a name for the region that's not already protected by a trademark here. Though you'll remember we went over and we produced an entire region. This week's campaign turned out to be really ambitious. It started with a simple character creation, and from the direction we got from the first 3, it turned into, let's do a political espionage, kind of a region hopping campaign. And that then turned into, now we have these 6 areas that I think what we'll do is we will further define them in the coming weeks. So we'll actually spend time on each region and give a little bit more context, because with the way that the broadcast and the show is set up, it's difficult to fully, to fully do this in the course of the week cycle that I wanted to continue. Although with that, King and I were having a conversation, and Delcorin last night was eating some popcorn as we were, about the direction of the channel, where it might want to go, what are some things that we could do differently. And I am open to suggestions, and I also know that several of you would want to play in some kind of an online campaign. And maybe I could rearrange the schedule so that my broadcast I come back from a Sunday, Monday break for Tuesday, and we can say, oh, well, Tuesday is the day that we broadcast the channel's campaign. And then the other 4 days are getting back to the basics of storytelling, character creation, going over rules, PC advice, DM tips, those kinds of things. Kibakichi says Mesotopia. Oh, Mesotopia. Hey, Peru. Oh, hey. Yeah, you make an appearance, draw from the deck of many things, and right off the rip you get 1d3 wishes. That's pretty good. Alright, so Kibakichi is saying that we call this Mesotopia. So this is the Mesotopian region, like the Mediterranean region, kind of a thing. Turn the volume. Okay, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. I can actually turn just the music of just the volume of the music down. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. If not, let me know, Clark, and anyone else. If you're having trouble hearing, or if something's not coming through, then let me know. Oh, and yeah, King's holding on to wishes. You should wish to defeat the not rabbits in the plains. Okay, so we spent this time, we spent time this week making our characters. Well, isn't that convenient, Peru? A little too convenient. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Clark, for letting me know. Our first character was Mainshin, and I believe it was King who offered the name for this character. You know, I'm going to click through it, and I'll go back if you want to be reminded of the personality traits and things along those lines. They'll come up in the course of conversation, though if you want me to specifically address it, let me know. So we had Mainshin, who is the halfling monk, and he was an outcast from his temple or his order. We have Folus Wrightsmith, half-elf, and he was multi-classed Bard Druid for a very interesting combination. Next, we had Deliaha, neutral rogue thief, and she was a bit of a compliment because while Mainshin is that evolutionary, the survival of the fittest, in terms of physicality, she is more about survival of the fittest socially. She's the social circles. Yeah, she's a charlatan. That's kind of what we rolled. 3 has a long description, so I just kept 3 up here. But if you look in the PHP, you'll see what it says. She's kind of the same way. She's not necessarily out to get people, but she wants to advance herself. She wants this social Darwinism to take place, whereas Mainshin here is more about maybe not an evolutionary. I don't think he's necessarily considered with the propagation of a species, but just, are you the strongest in what you are? Then we have Giov. Giov is a chaotic neutral sailor, and of all things, when I was going through the characters prior to the show to make out the worksheet that you're going to see, he is probably the closest to a good character, like a really good character that we have. If he cared, like if he shifted some of his cares a little bit more, he would probably go to chaotic good. In fact, of all the characters, as a campaign progresses, his character would probably be the first to switch alignments and to go into chaotic good. Though we have this chaotic neutral wild magic sorcerer. He is a high elf, and that would probably place him up here because that is the race, that is the majority race that owns, well, I'd say all this land, but a lot of this land is desert. You know, there's probably a city or some other like things around here, you know, along the waterfront. But for a major source of fresh water, this is the capital of this country. Which is interesting because we have a half-elf who comes from a noble family that she'll reclaim, and she'll reclaim the title that was taken from her, which is going to probably provide a bond of some kind between those characters because she probably belongs to a family up here. Lastly, and last night, we didn't give him a name, so in the downtime I went through and did that. We have Rillian Fairbank, and he was very interesting because it is a neutral evil character who is a monk, way of the 4 elements, and he is a spy / hired killer. Now you have a character like this in a party, let alone some of the others that we have in there, and a question that came up rightfully so in chat is, how are we going to weave these people together? How are we going to have characters who aren't all good, or maybe all but one of them are good and the one person's lawful neutral? Because I think we had that as a party last week or the week before. And this is why I labeled tonight's broadcast as Advanced Party Formation and Advanced Campaign / like storytelling. Because the players are going to have to challenge themselves to run compelling characters, and maybe suspending some disbelief, but still being true to their character, while also staying to the social contract of D&D of we're in this together as a party, and we need to resolve something together by combining our skills. You know, it doesn't have to be like a touchy-feely, you know, Disney afternoon adventure of good guys, and this certainly isn't. There is no one here that is good. Everyone here is for themselves, or if not for themselves, they're for the region, right? We come back to Giov, and Giov, he's been all around. He sailed around, and he just wants the region to be free. Hey, Patchwork98, you're starting on a setting. It's a fantasy version of America in the beginning of the post-Civil War Reconstruction. Whoa. Now, that'll be very cool. And are you doing a low fantasy, like low magic, low fantasy? Or are you making a high fantasy, or I guess I should be careful I'm saying these words. You have like low and no fantasy, right? There might be odd creatures, but there's not really magic. Or you have kind of a standard fantasy setting where there's some fantastic creatures and magic exist. Or we have high fantasy where there's floating continents and magic is used by a lot of people, that kind of a thing. How do you envision that? And also, Patchwork, hey, thanks for joining the conversation. While I am presenting a concept for a campaign we have going on here, ultimately you all in chat you're the important ones. I'm here broadcasting with you all, not even for you all. And so ask questions if you have them, bring up the things that you're doing, talk about a cool session that you had, or if what I'm doing here, Patchwork, might be able to help inspire you or to give you some advice. Awesome, because I want to be able to do that. Okay, Clark, talk to you later. Ro, as I burst in through the door, I'm here. Well, welcome back, Ro. Hopefully you had a good session today. If I recall, you said something like you had an 8 or you had another 8 or 12 hour D&D session for the day that you had planned out. Patchwork says low magic, but still has fantasy races. For instance, William T. Sherman was actually a red dragon, and Grant is half dwarf. Ah, okay. So you do want it to be, history as it has been recorded and as we know it, though just with these fantasy races or some fantasy elements thrown in. But the Civil War was still over the socioeconomic, background that it was, or all the historical figures exist just as dwarves or whatnot. Oh, Road had another 12-hour marathon. It was epic, he says. Yeah, well, Patch, fill me in a little bit more on what you've conceptualized for this campaign, or are you hitting any road bumps? Is there a way that I or other people in the chat, because there's a lot of experienced D&D players in the chat, and this is also a very useful resource. There are inexperienced D&D players in the chat as well, and sometimes they're going to ask questions that I may not, or I may overlook, or just not think to ask, but they're still extremely relevant and can help give you ideas in how to address the concept that you want to make for your players. And naturally, Ro, I would really enjoy getting some highlights of your 12-hour marathon game here, including the fact that you probably had some very delicious pizza, right? As Ro said, it might have been last week even, his game store, or the location he plays D&D, is right next door to a pizza place. So, I can be a jealous fatty. So in the week leading up, we made these 5 characters, we made a map, and we even went over making a dungeon as well. The dungeon itself isn't necessarily going to play a specific point in what we're doing for the campaign, but it brought up, I think it was Bobicus, brought up the good question of, why are all of these characters going to go into a dungeon together? Oh, Darkwolf just got home. Cool. Well, settle in, get something to drink, and come along for the journey. Oh, by the way, Patchwork, as you are new here, again, welcome, and you'll notice below that there are some different chat games and some fun things that you can do to join in on the fun. I certainly want to hear more about your concept and how you're implementing it, because it's important that, we're D&D players. Let's share our experiences. But if you want to play some of the games too, hey, have fun and go at it. And so Peru said, yeah, so how are we going to get these people together? Because if we look at it, and boom, it just so happens that I have a character sheet here. We'll do this. We'll open it up over here. And we'll bring them over, yeah. If we're sitting down as players and each of us made these characters, who doggies? This is gonna be interesting because these characters are probably not going to know each other. Last week we had the luxury of actually having people who've grown, like, because we kept the campaign in a city, and these people knew each other. They already kind of had bonds among each other. And when I was going through in the pre-show prep here, I was thinking, okay, so how would Giov react to Mainchin, Foles, Deliaha, that kind of a thing? And I was staring at these page 2s, and I'm like, I don't think that they would. And besides, that was a different style of campaign that we ran for the Tianese racket. So for this one, we can fill this in, and this is going to be more personal details, an advanced description on how they look, or mannerisms, maybe a list of favorite words, that kind of a thing. And I wasn't gonna fill that in for what we're doing, because we need to speak more broadly, because we have an entire region that we're going to end up exploring over the course of the campaign. Oh, I'm sorry, Patchwork. You said a setting, not a campaign. You're trying to get ideas. I know I want elves and dragonborn as natives. Drow is the Sioux Nation. It has trains and riverboats. Revolvers just invented. Like they won the war with Colt's first revolver type. Okay, so those... You might already know this. I'm being presumptive just because I don't have the information immediately after reading this. There are stats for that stuff in the DMG. So it would be easy enough to work in. If you need to see it, I have the DMG that I can pull up for you too. If you want to take a look or get some advice on incorporating things like firearms and whatnot. And you know, kind of interestingly enough, Rowmonger's playing through not a historical, like a historical fantasy revision, but he is going through a magical steampunk era. So the tech is kind of the same but different. I know that sounds oxymoronic. Though there are trains, but they run on elementals instead of on, you know, steam and physics. So it's interesting hearing that that you're working on this more, you know, real life version. Saturdays usually are, but it was extra busy today. Rose says you got a... Oh, someone got a sentient rifle today? What does the sentient rifle then say to the person who wields it? Oh, Dark Wolf. Well, hopefully it made the day fly by more quickly, right? Busy days are often good for that. Though you do feel a little worn out at the end. Yeah, bro. Sit your butt down and put your feet up and relax. Cap and ball or metallic cartridge. King says, perfect 4-island run on Into the Breach. Shame I can't tackle the final mission since I gotta go. Okay, see you later, King. Thanks for joining us. Patrick, yes, I did research most of all day. No cartridges, mostly Springfield rifles. Ah, okay. And by the way, as Patchwork mentioned, and it has been something that's recurred, especially with the YouTube links and the other things that I've provided down below, playing D&D opens you up to a ton of different disciplines. History, physics, science, chemistry, naval engineering. It can open you up to languages and cultures, right? And again, because Patchwork is taking his concept of these cultures that existed in history and is saying, all right, so from what we've built of fantasy races, which one would fit the bill? Which one could conceivably have grown as it did to arrive at the point it did in our history that still would be a good parallel history in a fantasy world? Delcorin goes into the forest. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a firearm, at least I don't think so. Is it a deer? Well, you're probably not hunting a deer when an orc warband jumps out. You attack with disadvantage with a +2 modifier. Does he get it? It stops on a 2 and a 16. Oh, yeah. Oh, Del is taken out by the orc warband. Oh, sorry to hear. This is... So, Delcorin, if we're going through Patchwork setting here, it is very important to realize that if you have a musket, it is just a single shot, and it's probably not too accurate, and the range isn't the best. You would want something like the Springfield rifle or like a 6-shot revolver or something. Darkwolf says, yeah, it was pretty fast, and luckily we didn't have too much trouble getting everyone out of the night. Okay. So when we're bringing our characters together, I was thinking about doing it in a spreadsheet, and this week proved to be a little outside the norm. We will not be using the hero's journey for this proposed setting, for this proposed campaign, for a couple different reasons. Oh, I think I was attacking with a butter knife. Oh, well. Well, hey, even if you did, if you fell on the butter knife, which you almost did, you did miss yourself. Maybe you could bring safety scissors next time. So, keeping it up here for you all. And in some way, if you need to pause or me to keep on something, this is only a one-page document here. There's not too much more below the bottom. We're comparing each of the party members along similar lines because we as a party, right, we're talking as PCs. Who are we and what are we doing? If we're approached by a DM that says, I want you to make a character on your own, here's the basic setting, right? Here's a map and maybe a page on each of the nations. And we're going to theme this to be a political campaign, so design a character around there. Now, we as DMs are trusting our PCs, us, to be responsible, and so when our PCs come back with lawful evil and neutral evil, we don't freak out. Because we realize evil doesn't mean eating babies, kicking kittens, pushing over grandma, that kind of a thing. Yes, that is evil, though evil is more of a concept of selfishness and putting your own needs, wants, and desires before others. And the degree of that is, well, how evil are you? Are you willing to subjugate an entire people so that you can live the high life as a tyrant? Or are you willing to pick pockets to just make it by or to supplement your otherwise honest income and go that one extra step? Rose says, well, the rifle's name is Barry Heavy Load. Think Barry White, the DM's wife voiced him. Oh, okay. He will only work with a female PC, and he pretty much only speaks in innuendo. And he wants Sten to clean his barrel twice a day. Oh, okay, so, well, wait, so is Sten wielding Barry Heavy Load? Or is it someone else, and the gun has just taken a shine to you? And for anyone who doesn't know, Ro is a beginning D&D player. Though it sounds like he's quickly getting a lot of experience and having a blast playing D&D. Haha, puns. He did start off as a male dwarf, and through an unfortunate series of draws from the Deck of Many Things, his outie became an innie, and he became a female tiefling. And so it seems now this sentient rifle is kind of hitting on him. Darkwolf says this whole month is going to be tough. Okay. Oh, yeah. And it seems kind of like an awkward transition time right now, Darkwolf. But hey, you know what? Get through it, and especially as the look, we have this sailor. He goes around. He's been around everywhere. He meets people. He works hard so that he can play hard when work is done. So you may not always have the opportunity to be here if work is kind of ramping up here for you. But when you're here, you can enjoy it, especially because Dark Wolf, you've been around for a while in the chat, and you've learned a lot, and you've done a lot here. So you can really savor it, or if you miss something, it'll be easier for you to fill in the gaps because you kind of got a rhythm of how we operate. Plus, I know you wouldn't be afraid to ask questions when you came back. Oh, okay. And the boss can't hire another person right now. Gotcha. By the way, before I go back here, for what Patchwork is saying, as it looks like Patchwork and Ro might be having kind of a little conversation together. Firearms in D&D don't necessarily break the game. Maybe they can conceptually. Just like nothing mechanically is stopping druids from wearing metal armor. It's just a recommendation. It's a cultural thing. Though if you have crossbows, bows and arrows, heck, you have people who are shooting magic missiles. Will a 6-shooter, will a muzzle-loaded musket break your game? Maybe not. Though in some ways it does show that your campaign setting has reached this next level. And that sounds exactly like what Patchwork is aiming to do, pun kind of intended, by having firearms be a part of everything. Especially then, if the magic system is low, we then introduce things like guns in order to empower players to have an effect on things at a greater distance. Whether it is part of survival and hunting for food, whether it's in the context of war or self-defense, or even solving a crime, if we want to go a murder mystery route. Because, hey, with what Patchwork was saying, we have this post-Civil War Reconstruction era. It's not like people stopped, killing and robbing each other, or it's not like there still wouldn't have been tensions or things that would happen. Oh, okay, Dark Wolf. Well, if you do, you do, and that's fine. Because look, we get sick, we have work, other things happen, and if you don't, well, come back and participate as much as you want. In fact, Dark Wolf posed a really good question in the Discord as well. That she wanted to know what the difference was between wizards and sorcerers. And I think we did a good job going over that. So here in stream, on camera, I'll answer questions, and as chat can too. Otherwise, you all can join us in the Discord. So now we're comparing our... Oh. Rose says, Sten got it due to the only other female PC can't use rifles. Barry is a dirty talking lever action carbine. Barry can fire 2 times a turn and needs to reload every 3 turns. After attunement, he starts stacking damage for every kill he gets and adds an extra d6 to his damage until he is reloaded or holstered. Ah. That sounds a little bit... That sounds a little bit like the... there was a relic that we used for the Barbarian. The epic level multi-class Barbarian we made. And it's if you look up the Sword of Kos, and actually, you know what, I can bring that up here. So we have file. Oh, I think that might be... That's another folder. I'll find it for you. But I really like the concept, Ro, and it sounds like your DM is allowing you to have fun and still be thematic, and isn't afraid of empowering you all with magic items or things along those lines. I would caution, and this is only from my personal experience and my personal play style. Your DM has a different one, and you as a player might have different expectations or experiences or something. I would be careful that your that your character is not defined by the items that you possess. That Sten is Sten, and you know, in this case, even through your pull from the deck of many things, Sten is still Sten, and Sten will grow over time. Sten will learn new things and get stronger and whatnot. But just be wary that when magic items, especially if we get to like higher level stuff about awakened items or awakened animals, sentient items, things along those lines, that the game doesn't shift away from you as characters accomplishing your goals, and instead is about the acquisition of goods, unless that is the, you know, if that's the theme of your campaign, then disregard me. But I have seen personally, and I even got to a point in one of my campaigns where I felt like I ran a campaign where it became more about the things people had, especially as like defining traits of the character. Like, oh, well, my character, you know, it's kind of bad enough saying, oh, well, I have an elven monk. Well, what does that really describe? As opposed to saying, oh, well, I am, you know, I'm et cetera, so forth, and I'm from the order of et cetera, and so on. But then if you find yourself saying, instead of I am Sten, and Sten does X, Y, and Z, it's, you know, oh, well, I'm a tiefling ranger, and I have this really cool weapon that talks to me. Just watch out that we're not drifting away from Sten, because you are the heart of your character, and without Sten, the weapon is nothing. And so Sten should still be this impetus driving the story forward and going from there. He yells things like, give them the business, and that guy took that shot like a champ. Yeah, I think it's excellent flavor, it's excellent window dressing, and it's a good way to help define the setting, like what was talked about above, the setting or the campaign style. But you know, Ro, come on, don't let Sten die. I want to hear about the adventures of Sten. As they continue, so on and so forth. So it sounds like that was one thing that happened along your 12-hour marathon. I'd love a little bit of a breakdown. Did you catch up with that necromancer gnome that was kind of like Jack the Rippering through this town, or were you able to acquire that airship that you were talking about and either chase him down or to move on to something else? Okay, so while I'm addressing there, or while you guys are forming questions, making comments, etc., we can see, comparing side by side, what we're working with, and then we can break it out and say, well, where are we good at doing things? Do we have a certain set of skills and whatnot? And also, in a region that has a lot of different races, what are our languages that we speak? What are the tools that we can use? What are our skills? And you'll see that many are repeated. For example, stealth. And then we have stealth. And then we have stealth. And then we have stealth. Only Giav here does not have the stealth skill as a why am I dripping out? As a proficiency. That said, he is a full caster who has, let's go over to him. He has a minor illusion spell, and he does have ways he can alter himself, so he may not even need to sneak around if he can make himself look like someone else directly, and things along these lines. So we have a stealthy party. We have one, if we look here, look at this, deception, 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 deception. we're getting some repeated skills, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because now this is going to, we as the players are getting together and we're saying, here's our party. This is our party's character sheet that we just made, and we can hand this to the DM and say, all right, this is who we are, and this is the direction we're taking as characters. And I, as the DM, would say, oh, well, thank you. You all put in a lot of work here. In fact, that kind of a thing. If you're helping me tell the story, I would probably be a little bit more lenient in certain situations. Or I would make sure that I'm trying to... You as a player would know some of the hooks that I'm going to bait to get you in to have an easier time, or to allow for your character to be spotlighted a little bit more. Ro says, no, we need transport to get the butcher. The politics of the world is really preventing easy travel. The world is on the brink of a world war. Oh. So there's, is travel of this kind rationed? Or you need 40,000 gold to get an airship. Sten is going to build it. Ah. Well, so that'll ultimately be cheaper than... just buying one, won't it? And you know what? That will be a good way to highlight Sten and her skills, and it could be a side adventure on its own if that's what your DM intends, to go out and get these raw materials, whatever this engine that eats elementals. You might have to hunt down some fuel as well as build an engine with special parts, that kind of a thing. So yeah, I can see a lot of content coming out of this. Now, Ro, are you as a player, since your character is going to be the one who gets to build it, are you sitting down with your set of skills in AutoCAD? And are you actually designing it on pen and paper, or have you put thought into this, or was this like really so new that you haven't you might not have had time for that yet? Now, lastly, regarding the party, I wanted to do what's called a SWOT analysis, SWOT, and this is traditionally a business term. You'll see this if any of you have pursued or will pursue a business degree of some kind. If you are supervisor, maybe more in a management position, you might have heard of this, or you've even needed to produce some of these yourself. And SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Oh, you started the quest for gold today, made 10 gold today. Oh, okay. I mean, that's fine. You can go like this, Ro, and you can say, we made 10 gold today. Though that's a little bit more of a drop in the bucket as compared to the 40,000 you need. Okay, hey, well, you got 10,000. That's pretty good, because remember, at least in the economy that is presented in the player's handbook, 1 gold is a day's income for, like, average Joe farmer. So you have 10,000 days of average labor that you acquired over the course of your quest. You're rich now. Strengths and weaknesses are categories that are internal to the organization. In this case, the organization is the party, but if you're doing a SWOT analysis for your business, it's stuff that will be inside of your business, physically or within the culture, things along those lines. Opportunities and threats are external to the party. And those are things that you can try and plan for, but ultimately you probably can't have a control over. If it's your job to make ice cream and suddenly the FDA bans ice cream, that's not internal to you. That would be an external threat to your business. Hopefully the banning of ice cream will never come about, otherwise there might be a glorious revolution. There's someone I listen to on occasion, and he has a fake organization called Fatties United, or FU. and should there be meddling with things like like taxing certain foods or salts or fats or sugars or something, the rally cry is that acronym. So when we do an internal analysis of our party, and again, I'm meaning to present this as a more advanced level party formation. The other parties we've made have been a lot more like casual. In fact, last week, that was just us sitting together at a table, maybe in some comfortable beanbag chairs, because that'd be pretty cool. And we made characters that have known each other for at least a couple years. We're already familiar with each other. Here, we made these political movers and shakers, and these deceivers, and these social maneuverers. and we made them in vacuums to bring them together because we as players wanted challenges personally and among the party, and we also wanted to present a challenge to the DM who was willing to step up and run more advanced concepts than here's the hero's journey, here's the traditional storytelling method, and you all are good guys and you're going to go after the bad guys, and then you're going to come back and then we're done. I'm not going to poo-poo on that story of that style of storytelling because it is tried and true. It's proven. There's actually a link below in the web page references. It is 6 of your favorite movies that it'll show you going on the hero's journey, how each of them took that journey. It's really good to watch. I would highly recommend doing that. So internally, our strengths are Dex and Charisma. We look here. Look at that. Oh, I'm sorry. Dex and Charisma. 17, 14, 18, 16, 16. Yes, these characters are different levels. That's not going to matter for the direction that they're going to go in. Especially because, remember, if we're really efficient, we start at level 1 with a 17, and you can only go up to a 20. Meaning by level 8, you could have a maximum stat in whatever your main stat is. So we have Dex for days, and we have Charisma for days. 12, 19, 16, 18, 14. We're all a bunch of flexible faces. Bobicus says the more potential internal conflict the party has, the more external things it needs binding the party together. That is true. Actually, Bobicus, I was bringing up some of the things that you brought up yesterday, too. Why would they be in a temple together and go from there? Rose says, our party has made a mercenary contractor company. Kind of why we needed a base of operations. Okay. So are you trying to then go out and collect the bounty on the butcher too? Or do you need to do all these jobs before you could even take that one, Ro? Bobicus then continues, because players will never break up a party, even when the PCs really should break up the party with incompatible goals, and that ruins games. Everyone just argues all the time because they have no in-character reasons to work together. That is very true. And in fact, that's going to be what we splash into here very shortly. Because we're about done with the concept of the party. We're making the party as a character and presenting it to the DM, and then we're gonna put on our DM hats. So I have like my city police hat on right now, and then we're gonna put on our DM hats in the next part, and we're gonna do exactly what you're talking about. Because Bobicus, you are absolutely correct. If we have our players come back and they have characters like this, how are we gonna herd these cats? How are we going to keep them together in a way that feels organic, that feels natural, and not just the players suspending disbelief and saying, I would never be with this person, and I don't even know why I'm here, because then everyone starts getting distracted, and it can end up kind of bad. So we do the SWOT analysis here. Our internal strength, Dex and Charisma, and we're really good at deception and persuasion skills. As well, a lot of people have disguise and thieves tools proficiency. And we also have a blend of melee and magic, right? So, and that's even including that some of our melee can use magic if they really wanted to. However, we have weaknesses. These are our internal weaknesses to the party. Strength and intelligence. Yes, Main Shin is our strong man. Boom, he has a 14. That's decently above average. Is it 20? No. 8, 10, 10. Everyone else has little baby arms. Then we come over to intelligence. Our highest is a 13. We do have an above average intelligence in the party, but we don't necessarily have the smart one. We don't have the brain in the group. And we also don't have the brawn in the group. We have things that are coming close. Rose says, we call ourselves the Bell Tower Associates LLC. We are going after the butcher. The papers in Tarrant are already reporting on his murder spree in Caledon. Ah, okay. And so I assume then that, that they must have printing presses, or at least an amnesis spell to be able to quickly copy one thing into something else. Hey Chris, welcome back. It's good to see you in here. Yep, Bobicus is absolutely correct. We are discussing how to build a campaign around characters in a dungeon, and it's not just a campaign or 8 characters. This is going to be a little bit more advanced in what we're doing. This isn't the simple, hero's journey with level 1 adventurers who are bright-eyed and they're all good aligned and they get their grandfather's sword and go out to, kill a goblin who's menacing the area. We're going into political intrigue. We're going into an area that has multiple countries and regions, and each of these regions, as we've established over the course of this week's campaign build-up, each of these regions has different populations, has different things that are happening, good or bad. Yeah, and it's in a political map because this is going to be some political maneuvering. Now, the opportunities for the party, right? Because strengths and weaknesses are internal. Opportunities and threats in our SWOT analysis here are external. Our opportunity, there's an excellent chance for a very RP-heavy campaign. Look at all the deception and the perception and things along these lines. The ability to infiltrate, the ability to maneuver with all of these different languages, to use disguise kits. This can be an excellently compelling RP-heavy campaign. Because not all campaigns, even if they're set against war, because Bobicus, early on when we were making this map and we were coming up with these ideas, especially because our very first character we rolled up for the week, his his bond, I suffer awful visions of a coming disaster and will do anything to prevent it. And that kind of translated in the map that we were making together in chat. As we have a region, not unlike the Greek city-states in the Mediterranean, who all kind of get along. There's some tensions. There's, we have Troy, we have Sparta, we have all of these different cities, and they will compete, right? You have Spartans, and you have Trojans, and Athenians, and you have Phoenicians, and you have all these groups. But in the case of, we could look at through pop culture, or even it is a compelling true story too, of the Battle of Thermopylae, which Frank Miller turned into the graphic novel 300. At that moment, because the Persian Empire was bearing down on them, they stopped being Phoenicians and Trojans and Athenians and all of these tribes, and they were Greeks. They came together. And so Bobicus said, well, what if then we were going to have some kind of an external threat? Kind of like a Persian invasion led by Xerxes. Something along those lines. It could be the evil external empire, or, they're evil to these people because they want to take over these lands. But something is moving in that's gonna take all the bickering factions and maybe sort of like, there might not be an outright war between them, but maybe different families might march against each other, and think maybe low-level kind of Game of Thrones stuff that you see if you've read those books. We've seen it in history, but I want to use pop culture terms here. So we have the individual things that they have to then turn to the outside, and that is a compelling force for a party to come in and to be a catalyst in that event. Do I want a recap of the session? Yeah, Ro, please. I know that I'm on camera and I'm reading this and showing maps off, but I'm looking at chat here, and I would love to hear. If for anyone new here, Ro had a 12-hour D&D session today, and as he was saying, things were a lot of fun. Now, he's talking with energy, but they were fun and apparently compelling. So yeah, if you want to give a synopsis, a bullet point, I don't know, right, bullet point, right? You got the sentient gun. Please share for me, and I'm personally curious, and I'm sure a lot of people in chat would like to know what you've been up to as well. I'm kind of sad that our new friend that came by ended up taking off, unless Patchwork98 is back in chat. Let me take a look real quick. No, unfortunately not. But as Patch was saying, he's working on a campaign setting that's kind of, it's taking real history. He was choosing Civil War during the Reconstruction, and Civil War during the Reconstruction, and apply a fantasy filter to it. Oh, all right, Del. Have a good night, and get through that overtime. You can do it. Yeah, more power to ya. Plus, you'll be able to see this as a video on demand, and a little later after that, it'll be up on YouTube too. So this is an excellent chance for a very RP-heavy campaign, including some non-standard combat. Because combat is a spice, especially how I run my games. Combat is a spice. It's to be savored. It kind of heats things up, and then you'll let your taste buds cool off. Though what's nice about all of this water, especially having a sailor and one who can cast water breathing, walk on water and whatnot, and spread it out, is that we can actually do things like have naval battles. We can do things like have underwater combat, so it turns into 3D&D, where usually 3D&D is like fighting dragons flying above you, or, you know, Vrox or Sturges or something. In this case, we can have underwater combat. We can have unique encounters on or underneath the water, instead of just, you know, going through the plains, going through, going through the forests, or the Underdark, which is, that's way more common. But now we're getting into maybe some advanced strategy in combats and advanced thinking in that regard. Diverse regions offer many narrative opportunities and the ability to travel as high along water and land alike. So we can, as a DM or as a party, we can explore not a city, not just, well, those are the nearby mountains and that's ever as far as, 90% of the population is gone. We can explore the cultures that exist in each of these places. We can explore, this desert oasis, even within the same country that exists these like fishing villages, or there might be another major city over here, as a port, because there's some deep water and everything kind of like comes in here, swirls and flushes back out. That means there's probably an interesting tidal phenomena that happens here too. Or there's a city that's here. It's right by the fresh water, and there's a little bit of arable farmland. Yet look how far away it is from the capital, or the so-called capital that's over here. Well, that was part of the write-up that we made for this area. That was randomly generated, but here we have Aslandia. The High Elves are probably living at the High Elves are living by the Oasis. The minority rock gnomes are probably living along the coast. Obviously, some would be in the capital too. And the racial majority were conquerors here. The ruler is iron-willed but respected. And notable traits, there are canals in place of streets. And could that be pervasive? Maybe. There's nothing on the map that doesn't say it can't be. And so if it's built on an oasis, we would almost have like a different version of Tianese. It could be built over the water. Especially because if you have your water shaded, then it's not as quick to evaporate. Or we could say that if you're building along the coast here, especially if it's something, if we have a port or trade city, we could even set it up, here, I'll use red. There could be a city here that belongs to that country and a city here that belongs to this one. And each one might collect different taxes, one coming in, one going out. They could be forts, there could be a tension or a rivalry. And with the geological events that occur, right, if we said that this was a rift, that this is where, like, there's a continental, like a subversion or something, there's this volcanic activity, let alone the fact that we as DM and maybe even as players know that a meteorite fell here and poof, took a big chunk out. Maybe there's a bunch of, like, cracks here in the coast. And so, not necessarily as canals, but as settlements were built up. Now let's back up. Hopefully I didn't go too far. There we go. So settlements were built atop it. It was important for one reason or another that we have these canals that are now navigable because they're filled with water. Whew. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was a lot. Romonger says 2 weeks after ridding Tarrant of the Butcher, we were sought out. By ridding, I mean you drove him off because he escaped you while chasing him. You were sought out by a very well-dressed elf. First elf we've met, who was an intermediary of a quote-unquote prominent citizen. Okay. And lastly here, just for the section that we're doing, is Romonger's giving a synopsis of his epic 12-hour session today. The external threats, there's a high chance for the party to feel like they should split, if not betray each other, and Bobicus was talking about that. And also, we should be prepared for a few different endings to the campaign depending on the choices that we as the party make, or if this is us as DM making a note at the end of this character sheet. What happens if X official is assassinated? By the party, by an external force, or what happens if the assassination is prevented? It would be very difficult to put this campaign on rails, to force these characters into situations, because these are very independent characters. So instead of putting them on a track to follow, we need to provide... we need to go bumper bowling with them. And maybe the bumpers fall off about halfway, so that there is still some risk. Or otherwise, if we don't remove them halfway, we put little chunks of the bumpers out, so the ball can seemingly get stuck, and then we'd have to go and bring it back out and push it back down the lane, but then it's bouncing around together along the way. Okay, so here's our party. I'm going to get up. Romonger, continue typing it out, because I will read it, even though I'm getting something to drink and I'm doing a stretch here. So keep typing that out. I want to see what you're doing. And when we come back, hopefully, Bobicus, this will help address some of the concerns you had. And if not, I want us all to come together and say, let's make a nice advanced level story out of these characters in this region that we worked so hard to develop.